She spent her last moments fighting men.
This is the story of Felita Bailey. On August 31st, 2024, Amarillo police responded to reports of gunfire at a house on South Avondale Street. A late-night gathering had grown after dozens of uninvited individuals arrived. During a fight that followed, multiple shots were fired. Felita Bailey was killed. Detectives secured the scene and began collecting evidence. Spent shell casings, video recordings, and witness accounts were gathered. Within days, investigators identified a suspect, Dylan Black, and connected him to a handgun of the same make as the weapon used. He was arrested and charged with murder. Forensic testing and surveillance were used to support the case. However, inconsistencies in the evidence, including conflicting witness statements and questions about the ballistic match, weakened the prosecution. On September 5, 2024, charges against Dylan Black were dismissed for lack of sufficient proof. The case remained open. Investigators pursued additional leads, executed more than 60 search warrants, and interviewed over 50 witnesses. Ballistics, video evidence, and testimony were re-examined. By March 2025, the investigation identified another suspect, Kanye Bailey, a relative of the victim. He was arrested in Dallas by U.S. Marshals and extradited to Amarillo. A Potter County grand jury indicted him for felony murder. Authorities confirmed that Dylan Black was no longer considered suspect. The case against Bailey is now pending trial. If you're captivated by real crime stories that peel back the layers of truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we uncover real cases, raise awareness, and give a voice to the voiceless. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in.
My daughter she would be 26. She would have been 26, October 26th of this year.
Still investigating a homicide that occurred during a Labor Day weekend after party. The family of the victim, Felita Bailey, wants justice and answers. ABC 7's Reagan Lopez has that story.
Felita Bailey was a 25-year-old resident of Amarillo, Texas. At the time of her death, she was known within her community for her active presence in local gatherings and events. She frequently attended social activities and was part of a broad circle of friends and acquaintances in Amarillo. Felita was also directly related to Kanye Bailey, who would later be charged with her murder. This family connection became a critical element in the case, as investigators later uncovered evidence pointing toward him. Although not widely reported in national outlets, local records and coverage identified her as someone integrated into the Amarillo community. She lived, worked, and socialized in the area, with friends and associates who later became witnesses to the events that unfolded on the night of her death. Her general background positioned her as a young adult in the midst of building her life. Information from her known social circles indicated she had an active lifestyle, engaged with others in her community, and frequently attended parties and gatherings. It was in the same environment, an after-hours gathering, that the incident leading to her death would occur. On August 31st, 2024, during the early morning hours, the location was the 1300 block of South Avondale Street in Amarillo, Texas. On this date, Felita Bailey attended a house party along with numerous others. Initially, the event appeared to be a controlled gathering, hosted with a set group of invitees. Those present described the beginning of the party as orderly, with only the expected attendees present. As the night progressed, however, the situation began to change. Reports later confirmed that around 40 uninvited individuals arrived at the residence. Their presence altered the dynamics of the party. With a sudden increase in the number of people, the atmosphere shifted. The gathering, which had started as a social event, became overcrowded and tense. Witness statements later collected by investigators indicated that arguments and disagreements began to arise among those present. Accounts described conflicts and disputes breaking out between various groups at the party. Tensions escalated steadily as the night went on. The increase in the number of attendees also brought challenges in maintaining order within the house and the surrounding area. As more uninvited individuals continued to arrive, the ability to monitor the environment diminished. By this point, the gathering had shifted from a contained party to a chaotic situation with too many people and rising hostility. During this escalation, multiple attendees reported hearing raised voices and witnessing altercations. While the exact details varied across witness accounts, the consensus was that the atmosphere had become unstable and physical confrontations were beginning to emerge. As the conflicts developed, the situation turned violent. Firearms were present at the party, and during the arguments, gunfire was discharged. In the midst of the chaos, Felita Bailey was struck by a bullet. She suffered fatal injuries on the scene. The shooting ended the party abruptly, with individuals fleeing the scene as police were called. Emergency response units arrived quickly, securing the area and beginning the process of collecting evidence. The death of Felita Bailey marked the start of a homicide investigation that would later involve multiple suspects, contradictory evidence, and a lengthy process to identify the shooter. The party began as a relatively normal social gathering. Eyewitnesses later reported that the number of attendees grew larger than intended when approximately 40 uninvited guests arrived. This change in the crowd dynamic created tension. At some point during the night, a verbal altercation broke out among attendees. Witnesses described raised voices, shouting, and heated exchanges. The verbal conflict did not de-escalate. Instead, it intensified into a physical confrontation. Accounts suggest pushing, shoving, and a rapid escalation where multiple people became involved in the disorder. As the confrontation peaked, a firearm was discharged. Multiple shots were fired in quick succession. The chaos that followed left several individuals injured, with 2 victims struck directly. Felita Bailey was shot during the incident. Emergency response reports state that she died at the scene before medical assistance could revive her. She became the single fatality of the incident. The second victim, Latoy/DeMaggi, sustained gunshot wounds but survived. He was transported to medical care for treatment and later provided information during the investigation. The aftermath of the shooting was described as chaotic. Witnesses reported partygoers fleeing in multiple directions immediately after shots were fired. This created a confusing and unstable environment for first responders. Several eyewitnesses remained on site and later provided statements, though many left the area before police arrived. When law enforcement reached the location, they found the party scene disturbed and scattered. Evidence had to be carefully collected from an environment where dozens of individuals had been present, many of whom were potential witnesses or persons of interest. The Amarillo Police Department was dispatched quickly following emergency calls. Upon arrival, officers secured the perimeter and ensured that surviving victims received medical attention. The immediate priority was to stabilize the scene, prevent further violence, and begin the process of evidence preservation. Detectives and crime scene investigators were brought in to start documenting the area. Officers canvassed the neighborhood to locate additional witnesses and identify surveillance cameras that might have captured parts of the incident. Investigators focused on recovering forensic and testimonial evidence from the scene. Multiple shell casings were recovered from the ground. These would later become central to the forensic analysis and ballistics testing. Detectives located surveillance footage from nearby residences and businesses. These videos showed individuals entering and leaving the party. Specific segments reportedly captured people holding firearms during the altercation. Law enforcement conducted extensive interviews with those present. Dozens of individuals provided varying accounts, some conflicting. Key witnesses pointed to individuals seen holding or firing a weapon during the fight. The first major suspect identified was Dylan Black, age 22. Investigators connected Dylan Black to a Taurus handgun. The weapon was recovered during the early stages of the investigation. Its presence combined with reports of Dillon holding a firearm, made him a central focus. Surveillance footage reportedly showed Dillon Black with what appeared to be a firearm during the party. These two pieces of evidence, physical possession of the weapon and visual identification from video, were significant enough for police to classify him as a primary suspect. Ballistics testing was conducted on the shell casings recovered from the scene. The analysis indicated that the casings were consistent with a Taurus handgun, the same type of weapon linked to Dillon Black. Although forensic testing can establish links between firearms and shell casings, the analysis was not conclusive at this stage. Nonetheless, the results supported the suspicion directed toward Dillon Black and strengthened the case for his arrest. These statements conflicted with evidence collected by police. The denial of firearm possession was challenged by both video footage and forensic analysis. The denial of presence was undermined by witness testimony that placed him at the scene. Because of these contradictions, Dillon Black was seen as an unreliable witness in his own defense. His shifting statements added weight to the case investigators were building against him. Based on the evidence available at that time, shell casings, video footage, witness accounts, and Dillon Black's conflicting statements, the Amarillo Police Department proceeded with his arrest. The arrest was publicly announced, with law enforcement presenting Dillon Black as the primary suspect in the murder of Felita Bailey. The announcement emphasized that he had been seen with a weapon, and that forensic analysis pointed to his gun as potentially being the one used in the shooting. This arrest marked the first major development in the investigation. Law enforcement acted swiftly. On the same weekend of the shooting, officers gathered enough preliminary information to secure the arrest of Dillon Black. The arrest was based on a combination of video surveillance, forensic testing, and witness accounts that seemed at first to connect him directly to the crime scene and to the firearm believed to have been used. When officers took him into custody, Black was charged with murder as well as firearm-related offenses. Police indicated that they had sufficient evidence at the time to justify those charges. The formal complaint included murder under Texas Penal Code statutes, with a firearm allegation tied to his alleged possession and use of a Taurus handgun. Investigators believe this handgun matched shell casings collected at the scene of the shooting. Prosecutors, relying on law enforcement's presentation, initially supported the charges, pointing to the combination of physical evidence and statements made by witnesses. In a press conference, the Amarillo Police Department highlighted two specific categories of evidence. Officers reported that video footage placed Dillon Black at or near the party where the shooting occurred. In at least one segment of video, he was allegedly seen holding what appeared to be a firearm. A forensic analysis linked the Taurus handgun tied to Black to spent shell casings recovered at the scene. At that stage, law enforcement described the ballistics match as consistent and reliable enough to support an arrest. This announcement framed Black as the central suspect in the case. It also reassured the public that authorities had acted promptly to bring accountability in a high-profile homicide investigation. Following the arrest, the case entered the court system. Prosecutors presented the evidence to establish probable cause, arguing that Dillon Black was directly responsible for firing the fatal shot. They leaned heavily on the surveillance video and the ballistics connection. The claim was that the Taurus handgun, linked to Black, could be tied to the shell casings found at the crime scene. The presence of Black at the party and his alleged possession of the firearm strengthened their argument. Black's defense team countered by questioning the reliability of the forensic analysis. They argued that the ballistics comparison did not conclusively prove that the recovered casings came from Black's weapon. Additionally, they highlighted inconsistencies in witness statements and raised doubts about whether surveillance footage clearly identified him. In the first weeks after the arrest, public perception was heavily shaped by the police announcement. Dillon Black was viewed by many as the primary suspect, and his name became closely associated with the murder. The emphasis on surveillance video and ballistic testing gave the impression of strong evidence. Media coverage reflected this, often repeating law enforcement's claims without the benefit of later clarification. As a result, for several weeks after Felita Bailey's death, community members assumed that Dillon Black would face trial and potential conviction. The turning point came just days after his arrest. On September 5, 2024, the Potter County District Attorney's Office announced that all charges against Dillon Black were being dropped. The decision was based on insufficient evidence, which made it impossible to proceed to trial with a realistic chance of conviction. The official explanation emphasized that the totality of evidence failed to meet the standard required to continue prosecution. While there were indications of Black's presence at the scene, and while forensic testing initially seemed to point in his direction, further analysis raised serious doubts. Several specific issues undermined the case against Dylan Black. The ballistic analysis, once presented as reliable, was later determined to be inconclusive. Experts could not definitively state that the shell casings came from the Taurus handgun associated with Black. Without a clear forensic match, the foundation of the case was significantly weakened. No witness came forward to state that they had seen Dylan Black pull the trigger or fire shots. While some witnesses placed him at the party, none could confirm his direct role in the shooting. In a criminal trial, this absence of direct testimony created a major obstacle for prosecutors. Witness statements were inconsistent. Some accounts conflicted regarding the timeline, the position of individuals during the shooting, and whether Dylan Black was armed. These contradictions diminished credibility of the overall witness testimony, further eroding the case. As a result, Dylan Black was formally released from custody once the charges were dropped. However, law enforcement made it clear that he remained a person of interest while the investigation continued. At this stage, the case had no formally charged suspect, but investigators indicated that their work was far from complete. Following the dismissal, Amarillo police and partner agencies began a comprehensive reevaluation of the evidence. This involved reviewing all forensic results with additional scrutiny, re-interviewing witnesses to address contradictions, reassessing the surveillance footage to ensure correct identification, exploring the possibility of other individuals being responsible. This reevaluation process ultimately led investigators away from Dylan Black and toward a different suspect, Maron Kanye Bailey, who would later be indicted for the murder. The scale of the operation reflects a multi-month reassessment rather than a single review task. APD also addressed inaccurate claims circulating on social media and other channels, noting that misinformation had complicated public understanding of the case. The department emphasized reliance on formally collected evidence and coordinated investigative procedures. Investigators obtained and served 60-plus warrants to access premises, devices, cloud accounts, carrier records, and other repositories. The warrant count indicates repeated, targeted retrievals of data and materials tied to potential witnesses, partygoers, and persons of interest. Each return provided either evidence for analysis or basis to seek additional warrants as new leads developed. The digital evidence review covered extraction of call logs, text group chats, and media content from phones seized during warrant service or provided voluntarily, raw phone videos recorded at or near the party, security camera footage from nearby residences or businesses capturing arrivals, departures, and activity on the street where the altercation moved outside, posts, comments, stories, and direct messages that reference a gathering, altercation, firearms, or individuals seen with weapons. GPS metadata were available, used to correlate the presence and movement of individuals with a timeline of the fight and subsequent gunfire. APD publicly characterized the dataset as extensive and emphasized that results from digital forensics were integrated with witness interviews and physical evidence to refine the suspect pool. Investigators conducted 50-plus interviews, including re-interviews of previously contacted individuals to resolve contradictions and to test new theories derived from digital and forensic findings. Interview subjects included invited guests, uninvited attendees who arrived later, nearby residents, and individuals identified from social media or video. The process aimed to reconcile statements about who possessed firearms, who discharged them, and where specific people were positioned when shots were fired in the street after the party moved outside. The renewed investigation was not limited to local resources. APD coordinated with Potter County District Attorney's Office, legal guidance on warrants, charging decisions, and grand jury presentation, Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS analytical support, and investigative coordination, U.S. Marshals Service, fugitive location and arrest operations outside Amarillo, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI coordination support as part of the larger task environment. APD publicly credited these agencies in March 2025 communications outlining the case status and the arrests that followed. As the expanded collection and analysis matured, APD reported that newly obtained evidence identified Maron Kanye Bailey, age 20 and cousin of the victim, as the armed suspect who fired the fatal shot. This conclusion, according to APD's statement to local media, followed the extended forensic and investigative work described above. The shift occurred against a backdrop in which Dylan Black, initially arrested in early September 2024 after the shooting, had his charges dismissed for insufficient evidence on September 5, 2024. Authorities later announced in March 2025 that he had been eliminated as a suspect in Felita Bailey's death. The change in suspect status coincided with the new evidence identifying Maron Bailey as the shooter. Investigative steps that contributed to the suspect re-identification included: investigators revisited and compared witness accounts from the night of August 31st, 2024. Re-interviews sought to resolve discrepancies and align statements with verified timelines and digital media. APD's public summary indicates that the volume of interviews and the structured comparisons aided in isolating who possessed and discharged a firearm during the street confrontation that followed efforts to remove approximately 40 uninvited attendees from the gathering. Not detailed specific test results. APD characterized the overall new evidence package, forensic, video, and statements, as supporting the conclusion that Maron Bailey fired the fatal round. Ballistic testing is a standard component in such determinations and, in this case, is referenced generally within the department attribution of evidence obtained after the arrest, identifying the shooter. Investigators reviewed surveillance and phone videos associated with the scene and surrounding area. This review, cross-checked against interview statements and device metadata, helped reconstruct movements, proximity to the victim, and firearm handling. APD has publicly emphasized the integration of video with other evidence streams in its case updates. These categories, assessed together, met the threshold for advancing the case beyond preliminary suspicion and toward a formal charging decision focused on Maron Bailey. Following the evidence reassessment, the case was presented to the Potter County Grand Jury, which returned an indictment for felony murder. The indictment preceded the arrest operation carried out by federal partners and was reported contemporaneously by local media. On March 14, 2025, the U.S. Marshals Service arrested Maron Kanye Bailey in Dallas on a murder warrant. APD and local outlets confirmed the arrest date and federal participation. Subsequently, by March 22nd to 23rd, 2025, records show extradition and booking into Potter County Jail, confirming transfer of custody to the local jurisdiction handling prosecution. Reporting also notes that the underlying homicide occurred on August 31st, 2024 on the 1300 block of Avondale Street in Amarillo. On March 24th, 2025, APD stated that Dylan Black had been eliminated as a suspect in the homicide of Felita Bailey. The department attributed this change to evidence obtained after the arrest of Maron Bailey, identifying him as the armed individual who fired the fatal round. This public clarification closed the loop on the earlier dismissal and updated the investigative posture moving forward. Maron Bailey was arrested in Dallas, Texas, where he had been residing in the months following the incident. His apprehension occurred outside Amarillo jurisdiction, requiring cooperation between multiple law enforcement agencies. Dallas was selected as a location for tactical intervention after intelligence indicated that Maron was present in the city and accessible to federal task force officers. The operation was carried out by the U.S. Marshals North Texas Fugitive Task Force. This task force specializes in locating and capturing fugitives with outstanding warrants, particularly those linked to violent crimes. The use of the U.S. Marshals indicated the seriousness of the charge and the necessity of interagency collaboration. Their involvement ensured the arrest was executed with precision, minimizing risk to officers and civilians. After the arrest in Dallas, Maron Bailey was extradited back to Amarillo, Texas. Extradition involved official transfer of custody from Dallas law enforcement to Amarillo authorities. The process was conducted under legal protocols to ensure Maron could face indictment and prosecution in the jurisdiction where the crime occurred. By March 15th, Maron was officially booked into custody in Amarillo, where legal proceedings commenced. Following his extradition, Maron was formally charged with the murder of Felita Bailey. A Potter County Grand Jury indictment had already been secured before his arrest, providing the legal framework to proceed. The indictment was based on newly gathered evidence that identified Maron as the person who fired the fatal shot during the party on South Avondale Street. The charges were classified under felony murder, which allows prosecutors to pursue a conviction when a death occurs during the commission of a violent act. After the arrest, the Amarillo Police Department held a press conference to outline the circumstances of the case. Officials confirmed that Maron Bailey had been taken into custody and transported to Amarillo to face charges. They emphasized that the investigation had been lengthy and complex, requiring persistent effort from local, state, and federal partners. The APD acknowledged that the case had drawn considerable public attention, particularly after the initial suspect, Dylan Black, was cleared of charges. At the press briefing, law enforcement addressed questions about the length of time between the murder in August 2024 and the arrest in March 2025. Officials explained that the delay was necessary due to the complexity of the case. They stated that investigators had to conduct a comprehensive re-examination of all evidence before identifying Maron as the suspect. This included revisiting ballistics, comparing new forensic results with earlier conclusions, and reassessing the reliability of witness accounts. The police emphasized that proceeding cautiously was essential to avoid repeating earlier missteps. In September 2024, charges against Dylan Black had been dismissed due to insufficient evidence. To prevent another premature filing, investigators opted to complete a thorough review before seeking a grand jury indictment against Maron Bailey. Law enforcement highlighted the extensive scale of the investigation. According to the APD, over 70 officers had worked on the case across different phases. More than 60 search warrants were executed, covering electronic devices, residences, vehicles, and digital communications. Investigators interviewed over 50 witnesses, some multiple times, to piece together a reliable timeline of events. Forensic testing, including ballistics and video analysis, played a crucial role in shifting the focus from Dylan Black to Maron Bailey. The APD underscored that these efforts were necessary to build a prosecutable case. Each layer of investigation added clarity, narrowing down the sequence of events at the party and identifying Maron as the individual responsible for the fatal shot. Forensic evidence became the central factor that redirected the investigation. Early ballistics linked Dylan Black's handgun to shell casings at the scene, but further testing revealed inconsistencies. Advanced re-examination later matched the fatal bullet and casings to a weapon associated with Maron Bailey. Combined with corroborating witness statements and video material, the forensic evidence provided a stronger foundation for charges. Law enforcement made it clear that without this reanalysis, the case might have remained unresolved. The technical precision of forensic science gave investigators the necessary confidence to seek an indictment and secure Maron's arrest. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.